Well, John Hill, welcome back to TCM.
Thank you.
It's so nice to have you back to talk more about your father's films, director George Roy Hill. Tonight, we're focusing on the latter part of his film career, and we're starting with a really interesting film. You told me this one is your favorite, Slapshot from 1977. This is a fascinating underdog sports story that is now a cult classic.
Yes.
This was the third time that your father directed Paul Newman. We spoke last week about his friendship with Robert Redford, but how would you characterize your dad's relationship with Paul Newman?
They were very, very close. I would say Newman was his best friend, actually.
That's so nice. But it sounds like they had a fun relationship on set. A lot of
Yes.
like hijinks and pranks going on.
Yes, absolutely. Although things got a little rough on Slapshot. There's a scene where Newman goes to Ned Braden's house, and Newman went up to my father and said, George, the car I'm driving, the brakes aren't perfect. So my father said, okay, well, just take it easy. And then the car went around the house, the back of the house, and it sounded like a horrible crash. And it was all just a prank that Newman had arranged with the crew. And then my father was like, okay, he found out there were about 7 crew members that were involved and he wanted to fire them. But then the rest of the crew said, no, we're all going to leave if you can't do. And then Newman said, well, now I have to go if the crew is leaving. I was the one to set him up.
Yeah.
So that didn't, so they all calmed down and continued with the.
And you're also telling me that there was a moment when Newman sawed your dad's desk in half. Is
Yes,
that
he
right?
did. He liked to tell the story of sawing my father's desk in half. And when my father got to his office and saw it, he was initially very upset. But then he just played Bach on the piano and calmed down. And then he got a big plank of wood, or had other people, and they put the desk back together. And then the studio told Newman that he had to pay for the desk. And then Newman said, well, actually, it's being used. The studio actually owes him because he's been renting it out to my father. So it just kept going, these pranks.
That's so funny. And Newman stars as the team captain for the
Yes.
hockey team, the Chiefs. But there are rumors that Al Pacino was supposed to have that role. Is that correct?
Al Pacino wanted to play it. He said in the past that it was a role that he wished he'd played, but that he was just told that he couldn't. He needed to know how to skate in order to do it. But I want to make it clear that it was actually because Newman had already accepted the role.
Right.
So,
Yeah, because Newman
because-
wanted the role
yes.
straight away once he
Right.
read the script. And is it true that he kind of tracked down your dad in order to make it happen?
Yes, Newman got a private detective to find out where my father was, and then on Sunday morning was banging on his door to wake him up and try to get him back on track, which he did do.
That's so funny.
Newman always described himself as a terrier. When he wants something, he doesn't let go.
And he's so surprising in this film. This is not the Paul Newman that we have seen in many films before this.
Exactly. I watched it recently, and I couldn't believe the gold fillings that they had put in his teeth. So I think he loved getting a little beaten up.
And the dialogue. He loved, I'm sure,
Yes,
loved
he,
the dialogue.
and then ended up being his favorite film. But he said she started talking with a lot of salty language after making the movie.
Well, John, thank you so much for being with me on TCM tonight.
Thank you.
And I'm glad we get to watch your favorite film. Here it is from 1977, Slapshot. Well, John, Slapshot is such an interesting film, isn't it? Because, again, it's your father playing with so many different tones. Like, it's violent, but it's a comedy. It's an underdog story. It's also about corruption in the sport. Do you think all of that mixture was why it didn't do so well initially, that people didn't really understand what it was about?
Well, I think it was people that saw it laughed at the violence. And my father felt, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, some of it's funny, and they're just punching each other, not for real. It's the movies. And what's wrong with laughing at that?
It's a little slapstick at times,
Yes.
the violence, it
Right.
doesn't feel especially violent because it is played for laughs. and critics were not so sure about the violence and also not so sure about Paul Newman in
Right.
this role.
Right. That's true. Yes. But Paul loved it, dug into it, was not afraid. Yeah, I think he did a very good job, and he could skate.
Yeah, he does a good job, and it's a film that is violent, as we talked about, salty dialogue, gritty realism, but all written by a woman, Nancy
Yes,
Dowd.
Nancy Dowd. His producer, when she came to his office, said, George, I'd like you to meet the truck driver that wrote the script. And she turned out to be very nice. You would never think she would write that dialogue. But it was recorded by her brother, who was in the minor league hockey team, the Johnstown Jets. And he just kept a recorder with him.
That was Ned Dowd, who was in the film.
Yes, Ogie Oglethorpe.
Yeah, there was also another important woman working behind the scenes, and that was editor Dee Dee Allen.
Yes.
A legend in her own right.
Yes.
What do you think she brought to this project?
Well, my father didn't want any fat on the scripts, and she was just that way, where, just get it moving forward. So she was very good about that, as evidenced by the work she did on Bonnie and Clyde and so many other movies.
Yeah,
So
great pacing.
Yes.
Just keep it moving.
Yes. She was always told that she got hired to do the hard movies,
Yeah.
such as Slaughterhouse-Five, which she also worked on.
Yeah, we're about to watch Slaughterhouse-Five, which actually we've never shown on TCM before, and I hadn't seen it, although I'd read the Kurt Vonnegut book. And that's a film that really needs a steady hand as an editor because of all the time jumps in the story.
Exactly. That, he said, was one of his favorites.
Oh, wow.
If not his favorite, yeah, because he had to think it through. That one. It was not easy.
Now, your father made a couple more films after Slapshot before retiring from his film career, but what did he do after that?
He taught directing at Yale.
Mm.
And that was a big, but he kept wanting to, continue to work. He had a few other scripts, but sadly he contracted Parkinson's. That was a tough thing for him to deal with, especially,
tough road. But did you get a sense from him of what he was most proud about in terms of his film career? Did he talk much about the work?
I would have to say it's, his relationship with Paul Newman and Robert Redford. And I think he really enjoyed just the idea that, wanting the actor to feel safe. This is a place where we can play. Andrew Duncan on Slapshot, who played the announcer, was one of the few actors he let just go off.
Everybody is just on their feet screaming, kill, kill, kill. This is...
Yeah, there's a real sense of fun and playfulness
Right.
in his films, which I think is part of the reason why they remain timeless.
Yes, yes.
Well, John Hill, thank you so much for joining me on TCM all these weeks. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you about your father, George Roy Hill.
Thank you.
And up next on TCM, we're going to be watching the adaptation of the Kurt Vonnegut novel, which is a TCM premiere, so stay with us.
Next on TCM, Slaughterhouse-Five, then A Little Romance, and later, The Little Drummer Girl. Get your fill of George Roy Hill tonight.